Welcome to my new calculus channel. My name is John Gabriel, and today I'm going to teach you what the meaning of ratio and fraction and division all actually mean. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, in mainstream academia, there is quite a problem because they tend to not understand the difference between ratio and fraction and obelus division. So all numbers are actually fractions and formed from ratios. And of course, I've spoken about that before. But what I want to show you now is that you cannot go easily by the definitions in Webster or anything else, because remember, the Greeks were the first to define ratio. And so in modern notation, this is from the elements, the ratio of magnitudes alpha and beta is denoted alpha colon beta, okay? And this comes from definition 3, where it says a ratio is a certain type of condition with respect to size of two magnitudes of the same kind, okay? And of course the Greek on the left-hand side here. So I'm not going to read it, but those of you who are Greek will know that it's identical to the English. And so that's what is a ratio, okay? And mainstream academics have problems understanding the difference between ratio and fraction. Well, of course they would, because they don't understand what is a number, right? So in one definition on Math World, it will say an irrational number is a number that cannot be expressed as a fraction p over q for any integers p and q. Well, the thing is, if you express a number like that, then it's got to be a fraction, right? You can, for example, say pi is equal to c over 2r, because c and 2r don't have a common measure, okay? They don't have a common measure. So now, let's see what the difference is. When we write c, circumference, compared, this colon means compared to 2 times the radius or the diameter, that's a ratio, okay? That doesn't mean that it's a number. It's not a number, because in order to be a number, so that we can write it as c over 2r, requires that both circumference and diameter have a common measure. They don't have a common measure, okay? So you cannot write c over 2r, because neither of those have a common measure, and so c over 2r is not a number, okay? Is not a number. You see, we use the vinculum to give the measure of the antecedent aliquot part as to give it a name. We use the vinculum, either the horizontal one or the slanted one, to give this measure a name. Now ask yourself, in any circle, is the circumference equal to pi? No. And you can say, well, if you choose a unit, there is no perfect unit in geometry. And that was the reason that Euclid in Book 7 introduced the abstract unit, whose size does not matter. Okay. So once the abstract unit is introduced, then you can proceed to do some kind of measure that doesn't require a physical or a unit whose size is relevant, okay? So the size of the unit no longer matters. It's an abstract measure. So every number is given a name according to whether or not the initial ratio, as you see here, can be described by a measure, okay? So there's no common measure here. Therefore, we cannot call c over 2r a number. Now, c divided by 2r means c over 2r, okay? And this is a kind of obelus. This is obelus division, where you say, okay, let's do a long division algorithm, and we take away the subtrahend from c until there's nothing left, right? Or a remainder which is smaller than the subtrahend. So that is obelus division. But in mathematics, professors simply don't understand the difference between ratio number or fraction and obelus division. They're totally confused when it comes to that. So you cannot, for example, say that pi is equal to c over 2r, but you can say that pi is equal to the ratio c colon 2r. This is correct. But to say that it's equal to c over 2r is incorrect, because pi is not a number. Okay, so, and it also goes against the statement here that it's an irrational number, because irrational number says it cannot be expressed as a fraction, but then that's exactly what the morons in mainstream do. They express it as a fraction, c over 2r. Okay, c over 2r means it is a fraction. In other words, it's a number, suggesting that both c and 2r have a common measure, which they don't. All right? So the failure of mainstream academics to pay attention to detail has resulted in the garbage you're now forced to learn at school. So they don't know what is a ratio, they don't know what is a fraction, and they often mix those up together, confusing the two, and that's why modern mathematics is in such a state that I would call an absolute mess, and students never learn mathematics, and they can't understand mathematics because number is the most important concept in mathematics, and mathematics is about measure and number. It's the science of measure and number, nothing else. Okay? So I hope I've cleared that up, and I'll provide a few links to some excellent articles that you could read to understand all these things. My name is John Gabriel. This is a New Calculus channel. Till next time, goodbye.